Welcome everyone. This morning we're having our first Artist in Conversation at the Tanks Art Centre in Tank 4. We are in the Where's Your Permit gallery, sitting in the Yarning Circle. So to start off, I just want to firstly acknowledge the traditional owners on whose country we meet and are gathered today, and recognise their continuing connection to country. And we just honour their elders, past and present, and their emerging leaders. So sitting beside me today, I have Catherine Curnow, who is one of the CIAF trainees. She's also an emerging artist. On my right is Susan Reys. Susan is a professional artist and based in Cairns. Next to Susan is Garth Murgha. Garth Murgha is also an established artist, and both Susan and Garth are presenting works in the Where's Your Permit exhibition. So to start off, tell us about your practice and who your people are.
First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owner, Gimoy Walba Indingi, our past, present, our young ones, our emerging, and everybody here. My name's Garth Murgha. I'm a Kunganji man, born from Yarrabah. Both me and my partner, we run a small business base down in Babinda, and where we been involved in this industry for nearly 30 years, and sharing our knowledge and culture, with the rest of the people.
I'd also like to pay my respects to the traditional owners, the Gimoy Wallabari Yidinji people, and thank you, Fran, for inviting us to have these important conversations. So my name is Sue Reys. I'm a descendant of the Fraser Island mob, the Bajala peoples, and also a descendant of Starkey in Cooktown, the Dartapa peoples. I've been doing art forever. While working, weighing things up, and then finally, about 7 years ago, returned back home to establish my art practice. So I've been creating ceramics and paintings for 7 years here in Cairns. My partner and I, Hendrik Formail, opened up a gallery space about 2 years ago here in Cairns. And it's exciting and it's rewarding for the purpose of creating art to help other people find a connection to our history, I guess, and our history and what the earth and what our relationships with each other means to us. So it's really nice to be able to share that with others. Thank you.
Hello, good morning. I'd like to thank the traditional owners, past, present, and future. My name is Catherine Curnow. I'm a trainee here at CIAF. I help install the artworks that are all here, and my family and I only know most of my Torres Strait side from my dad's side, and my clan are saltwater crocodile, Aikadal, and my Aboriginal side is brown snake.
Thanks, guys. I should actually say who I am because I haven't introduced myself, have I? So I'm Francoise Lane. I'm a co-curator of the Where's Your Permit exhibition, and my people are the Meriam and Kaiureg people of the Torres Strait Islands. And it's a pleasure to have you guys with me. I've got to say that I think it takes a lot of courage for artists in this exhibition to share their stories, and I really love what you've both brought to the exhibition, Susan, I think of your work, and you've got two beautiful pieces in here that are steeped in meaning. Can you tell us a little bit about those works?
Thanks, Fran. So I have two artworks. One is called Finding My Way, and the other one is called If Only. It was really interesting. I mean, just, thinking about what the title of those artworks was, I guess a little bit heart-wrenching. So I guess, so that painting, Finding My Way, is basically about what I believe is in the minds of all Indigenous people. I'm not too sure, I didn't want to make it too obvious that people can see it's actually a silhouette of a person and then the eagle over the top. So foremost, that's to represent, they're the thoughts, the symbols and the icons that I've got inside of that space are the stories and the experiences that we have through, where's your permit? Our ancestors having to have this permit and colonisation. But the eagle over the top represents spiritual people. We all have this, belief that our ancestors, or there's some type of spiritual guardian that's with us. My Aboriginal name is Doolan, and which means owl. So a lot of times I feel as though, my owl spirit is always with me. So when things are hard and I'm battling with things, or I'm confronted with racism, or I see terrible things or experience it, that's the thing that brings me back to, like, Sue, you remember who you are and you're strong, and, you'll be right. You're still protected by the ancestors. So inside the first painting is, on the left-hand side, is shields and totem poles. They represent that we were here first. Then you move to the next part of the painting is you've got some hands that are coming up out of this black space. And that's really, for me, quite emotional, because it's about, we've always tried to get out of that hole, try to be recognised for who we are rather than the colour of our skin. And the next part is the barbed wire. So the barbed wire is broken. Of course, that represents all the barbed wire that's over our land, and that stopped us from, accessing our land. So, but I wanted to keep the barbed wire there because it's still there. That's still happening, us having access back to what belongs to us. And then it looks like a bridge, but it's not actually. It's they're filing cabinets, so files that have been kept on us, and there's papers that are flying, and that represents how we've all been on that journey trying to find, what our connection was, who was our great ancestors. And then that then goes into the mouth of the British. Now, it was really important to me not to focus on religion. For me, in this storyline, it all began with, colonisation, the British coming here. So I've got a British man, with the law kind of curl wig on him. And then behind that then is Windsor Castle, so that's where all of this kind of stuff comes from. And the back is the beautiful three-ditch stained glass windows. They have in this area where they bury, their important mob. That was important icon for me to put up there, because in that space it's all about, them and what they want. And then the rest of the space is it's quite open, and there's some crosses there which represent our mob who are on, unmarked graves on the land. But then I wanted the painting to come to something that was a little bit more positive in the story, because we are strong Indigenous people and we have prevailed and we always will. And so you have a family, so mum and dad, and mum's holding, baby on the hip and another little one there. So it's about how we have, and our ancestors have gone through us, but our, parents, our grandparents have always been there to support us and to, keep telling us, to be strong, and that, you will get through things. And that's what I'm trying to show in that part of the painting. And they're walking, out towards some elders who are sitting, kind of, there's a mountain there that represents, around that corner is Yarrabah. So it's about our mob are really too, embracing their culture, and the younger ones are wanting to know more stories, and I think they are feeling a lot stronger than my generation about their identity. And so, yeah, families are walking towards elders and sitting with them now, you know, a lot more, I feel, and wanting to learn stories about them. Yeah.
I think it's really interesting that with the exhibition title of Where's Your Permit, artists have responded in different ways, and I know that for other artists it's not just you alone, Sue, where they've grappled with what effect the act has had upon their families. So there were those that who are still alive in our families, and it wasn't that long ago, who have lived under the act. And then you have children who have that disconnect because their parents were not allowed to speak their language, not allowed to practice, and were sent away from their land. You know, they were just moved. When I've spoken to one of the artists here, Frida Messina, she had spoken about, you know, just how heart-wrenching it was, but necessary to create her woven pieces, but that there was healing in it. Would you say that there was, like, being able to work through the art brought some kind of healing?
Yeah, I think there definitely was, and especially in that space, in that time of creating the work. So when I first started, you know, doing the artwork, I had pieces of paper with charcoal drawings everywhere, and they were quite intense, and it was bringing up a lot of memories. I mean, my nana was removed from Fraser Island. She was on the last boat in 1905, so she was a young girl. And there's a really sad story about all the other elders who were on the other boat. So they all passed away because the boat sunk, the ship sunk. But Nana, she was forced to marry my grandfather because of the colour of her skin. And that wasn't a good relationship, you know. So my heart, you know, hurts thinking about, you know, what they both went through because they were forced to marry. They didn't have the freedom to even love the person they wanted to, you know, to love and be with. So, and lots of memories of my mum when she was young. Her and Nana came over on the barge, you know, had a permit for the day, and then they missed that last barge. So I think Mum said that she was about 6 years of age. So Mum and Nana were then put into a cell overnight because, you know, they didn't get back on the barge in times. And Mum recalls that as being a horrible experience and being really scared, like a young child in a prison cell. And I guess then I got to the other part of the painting where it's like, yeah, they are really horrible, sad things that have happened to our mob. But our mob are beautiful and our parents and grandparents are strong, and it's because of them, you know, that we have what we have, and that we need to be strong. Remember that, remember those things, but walk strong and be strong for our families. So that's the next positive part of the painting, which I guess then brings really good, happy memories and feelings, and then thinking about my daughters and just how amazing and strong, you know, Aboriginal women they are.
Yeah, there's so much hope in our children, and when you see the young ones owning their culture and being proud. Garth, your approach, the artworks that you presented come from a different place of having that cultural authority, that permission to create artefacts. And can you tell us about what you've exhibited here?
Well, with a lot of my pieces, and with a lot of us that's in here exhibiting our work, a lot of that has been passed on from our grandparents, aunt, uncles, and they're the one that inspired us to continue. So with my work, I don't paint them much, but I'm a wood carver. I carve. All my pieces that I do is all timber, and every piece of timber tells a story itself. Like when I'm working on a piece, when I open it up, you know, I look at, you know, connecting with that, what's it telling me? You know, a certain grain or a notch in the timber. So just reading that and, you know, connecting, you know, what piece that I'm going to put together. And a lot of my artifacts, you know, is, you know, based on my my clan group, you know, where I come from, you know. A lot of the artifacts like my hunting weapons, you know, the sea, the land that, you know, provided for us. So in a tribe, it was important that, you know, making these weapons, you know, making these artifacts, you know, you had to have good artifact, you know, if you wanted to provide, you know, and for your family and that. So one of my pieces that I've got here in the back, you know, with the Shadowbox story, well, when I was a young kid, I seen my grandfather, my uncles, they all had this, you know, the Shadowbox. In the 1960 and 70, a Shadowbox was really popular. Everybody throughout Australia wanted Shadowbox, like examples, you know, your wooden spoons, anything, items they collect. And it sort of first originated from Sherberg community, and then all the other communities, you know, started to introduce. And so I was fascinated with that, and I've always wanted to, you know, do one of these pieces. It's taken me a lot of time and, you know, planning this all out. And so I eventually, you know, sat down and, you know, due to this COVID now, well, the only good thing it gave us, you know, a chance to work on a lot of pieces that we sort of didn't finish. And so that's what's really important, like, to us.
And your shadow boxes are, they're made up of boomerangs and different types of boomerangs, and you've got 2 shadow boxes in this exhibition.
Yeah.
One is themed on hunting and gathering, and the other one's themed on saltwater. I noticed that the shadow box themed on saltwater is the positioning of the artefacts looks like a swimming turtle.
Yeah. Yeah, so what I actually done was, if you look really hard, I've used 10 different artefacts from the rainforest. So, you know, you got your swords, you know, your spears, and, you know, I included all that, you know, that's just, you know, represent, you know, my clan group and, you know, the artefacts that we used. Yeah.
Catherine, during installation, you had experiences with or interactions with some of the tank staff, installation staff around Garth's artefacts, and it provided a really good opportunity for cross-cultural learning, and that was regarding the installation of the artefacts. Did you want to share about that?
For me, I don't know much of Indigenous culture, but my grandmother, she always says you must respect your culture and how they are represented. And this, how Garth is, the men are the only ones that are supposed to hold the equipment that are there. And I respect that because that is our culture. Men, and this was a new understanding for the tanks team as well, to install something that is new like this, for them to understand that this is only meant for a certain gender as well.
Yes. So the swords of Garth, he has a wall of artefacts, and they're beautifully crafted pieces. Garth had requested when I it's for
requested an Indigenous person, you know, to set that up, and, you know, I'd just like to, you know, congratulate you on, you've done a marvellous job, you know, displaying those, you know, I can see a lot of effort and planning that you have put into it, and it really stands out. So I really thank you.
I one of the things that you asked me was if Tiho would be involved in installing those, and I said to you, I think we can arrange for that to happen, and I picked up on what you were saying, that you preferred for a man to install those pieces. It was really good that whilst I had talked with the team about that, I mean, there's just this, we were all, because we know our culture, we know what's respectful, that Catherine, when she was asked by the tank staff to help hold some things, and that was the opportunity where you said, I'm not actually supposed to be holding these, I don't feel comfortable, they're ceremonial pieces.
When I forgot his name, I'm so sorry to the person, but he asked that we would come and help Tio and Luke set up Garth's artworks, and when mentioned, because you did mention that one of the artworks, there will be certain artworks that are able for women as well, and for men, and then I realized that something hit me, and it just didn't feel right if I held it. So that's when I came over to you and asked you.
Yes, that was something lovely in this exhibition. During installation, there was, a lot of care and respect for all the artworks, but there was also that consideration of upholding our customs, and even across our different nations and clans, we have a strong sense of what's respectful, and we uphold that. Do you think it's important to talk about life under the Act, and to have exhibitions such as this that allows for truth-telling? So do you think it's important, and if you do, why?
Yeah, it's very important, telling the truth, some of our stories and, our sacred object, it's good to, educate the people out there, more about awareness of our culture. That gives us, a better understanding. So it is, very important, So under the Act, because, going back under the Act, a lot of this now, it was forbidden. A lot of our elders weren't allowed to even, speak language, to practice, some of our culture. If they got caught doing this, they'll get, punished bad. So, here we are. We're lucky that some of it's being, passed on to us, and that's our duty now to continue to pass this on to the next generation.
Susan, did you want to add at all?
It is important, the truth-telling, and I guess when I think about those words, truth-telling, it's really about us sharing our stories, which are the truth. When you were saying that, Garth, though, reminded me how my grandfather was Filipino, my grandmother was Aboriginal, and Granddad, he had a cafe, and this was around the Rusty's Bazaar area, and there's a big tall tree, and it's still there today. And every Sunday, Nana used to hide behind that tree, and that was so that she could meet with her own Aboriginal mob, because it was, forbidden. So this is my grandparents. It's not a long time ago. And Dad, and so my father, who was a young lad, he used to always sit up in the tree, because he said that was the only time he heard language speaking. So they used to do it in secrecy. But, so Nana used to, make tea and, scones and stuff, and they would all yarn under the tree. But, that's really sad. And I think with that truth-telling, that's that story, that's my grandparents. That's not a long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also relate to that. My mother lived through those times also, and her brothers and sisters. It was very difficult. Yeah, very difficult time. Catherine, what has stood out to you with some of the stories presented by the artists in their work?
Stood out most, just knowing and getting the knowledge through it as well. And like again, just sorry, which I put into words. Like I don't know, just I can't explain into words, but just visit, like looking at it, you can feel it in a way as well. It's really heartbreaking as well, just seeing all the artworks, but also it's good for us to know this information for people that are young, for us Indigenous mob as well, that are like for some of us that are like that don't know much about our culture. It's good for them to just full in this knowledge as well.
And is life, I guess, the act which has been strongly referenced in the artworks. Is that something that, I guess, as a youth, that your generation knows a lot about?
For some of us, not most actually. But I do know some that actually have grandparents as well, and their moms and dad have experienced that. Even some of my actual grandparents have actually experienced that. So I do know some of it, but not all of it. So again, this is good for the knowledge as well. Gaining this is good.
Yeah, and having the full versions of the Act that you can read, so that for those who are unfamiliar with it, they can read those documents, they can read that law, and it's right there, the evidence that so much control was taken out of the hands of Aboriginal people. We didn't have any power in those days, so it happened, and it went beyond just restrictions in movement. There was control, right across the board over how we lived our lives, how we practiced our culture.
Fran, if I could just maybe say something else as well. So with this truth-telling, it's a good opportunity, and one thing that I think is important. So I live next to the Aboriginal Diversionary Centre, and I see a lot of, Aboriginal people, Indigenous people who are displaced, and it's really, really sad to think that, that was during that period of time, with the permit. But still today, we're still seeing, and our mob are still experiencing, the effects of that, the displacement, it's the loss of identity. That's what I think when I see mob, and I guess it just comes back to that thing that, it's important to know our history, and it's important to know when you see Indigenous people who are displaced and have little, be kind to them, because they've been through a lot.
The legacy of those days that we live with is that inherited trauma, and I'm so glad that those two words have been put together, because I think for our generation where, our parents have suffered all kinds of horrible things, and their parents did also, that outplays, generationally in how they parent, with the mindsets they have. And I think for me, it's a relief to have those two words spoken out, and because it takes shape in different ways in different families. And I think if we allow ourselves to be as vulnerable as the artists have been in sharing their story, and you can think back to the time that their work has produced from, those not just the time, but the location, that there was such remote locations and under the control of a protector or chief protector that in too many cases were the antithesis of what the word protector means. There was no protection involved. It was about breaking people's will, breaking their spirit, breaking what makes them proud. And when they were proud, taking away whatever it was that made them proud. So I really encourage viewers to have a look around, to learn, and I think, like Susan said, have compassion. Think about how you can be a difference in whatever circle you're in, how you can influence change and give a voice and be a part of authentic self-determination for Australian First Peoples. So it goes beyond just looking at the artwork here today. So I'll open up if there are any questions that people would like to ask or comments.
Yeah, come see the exhibition, enjoy the artworks. I guess, you know, some of them are, all of them are actually lovely to look at. But look behind the loveliness of the colours and so forth on the canvas, because behind that is something we want people to engage with. You know, look at the icons, look at the symbols that are in there. What story are we trying to tell? You know, what can you learn from that, I guess, from those artworks?
It's that, friend, it's that spiritual connection. You know, us Aboriginal people, Indigenous people, we are spiritual connected. We have our God. And at the back of us, we, you know, although our elders and that are gone, but I can feel their presence, you know, with us. They'd be proud of what we are doing, you know, sharing this. So I'd just like to thank you, Janina, and the rest of the CIAF crew for, you know, giving us this opportunity, you know, to share this with you. And, you know, if you're doing nothing at home, come down while it's still open and come enjoy all the beautiful artwork. So thank you.
We have a question over here. Do you want the mic?
Just, I found the whole experience extraordinary as a co-curator with you, Fran, and just seeing the work when I first saw it, you know, when it first was installed. But it's so important to get this message across to people right across Australia and across the world. Can you see it touring? Do we have a chance to tour this? I reckon it'd be fantastic.
What I think has really shown through this exhibition is its relevance and pertinence to the time that we live in now. Our history and truth-telling has so much room for improvement in this country in every way, through our educational system, through every way. I think through exhibitions like this, art can become a tool to create bridges so that understanding and shared experience can lead to better education of what Australia's First Nations have been through. I think it's really important that Where's Your Permit goes beyond this region, because these stories are all over our nation. And in different ways it extends beyond Australia. It goes into those Indigenous nations in the world who've also been colonised. So, you know, there's such huge relevance for this exhibition, and there's just, absolutely it needs to go beyond the region.
I find that it's fascinating. So I met a lot of tourists. I find there are so many tourists who actually know more about Australian Indigenous history than Australians. So, you know, this exhibition to tour in Australia, like you were saying, Janina, is so important. And I think it's a good time for it to happen. Maybe people, you know, with what Sydney and Paul and Victoria, Melbourne are experiencing, I don't know, they might have an epiphany, you know, a little bit of an understanding of what it's like to be forced and controlled and be confined in a space that you don't want to be, and you want to be out of that space.
I think with the where's your permit premise, and I guess part of that focus, or the bridge was, we are living in a times of restrictions on movement, that it's for the greater good. You know, what happens when it's not for the greater good, and that's where where's your permit really, you know, becomes that platform for truth telling, and it's educational in that it tells those narratives of why there's inherited trauma, and why when people say just get over it, what are you going on about, you know, and all the other harsh, awful things that are said out there. Because we live with inherited trauma, it's not as simple as getting over it. Yeah.
I really love how that you've got the act, is that how I describe it, on the wall. And if you look at all of those points in there, read through them, because it's quite amazing. But when you do that, put yourself in the shoes of that person, and imagine if it says that, yeah, you can't speak your language, that you must, you know, be wedded with whoever the pastor says that you wed, and it must be of a man or a woman of a lighter colour, because the whole thing was to breed out the black colour. But it's pretty amazing, and it's a bit heart-wrenching and daunting, and we've done it as an activity for workshops. It really makes people think, oh my God, how would I feel if this was done to me? So yeah, have a look at that act and read through each one of those points.
Well, I just want to say thank you, Garth, Susan and Catherine, for coming in this morning and being willing to talk further about the exhibition and about your pieces, about being part of the installation team. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fran.
Thank you, Fran.